Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, good evening. It is a very great pleasure to be here and to speak to all of you about a very important period of Thai history. May I introduce myself as a university lecturer. I say that first of all because I'm used to speak for 3 hours at each lecture. But this evening, I have been asked to confine my speech to around about half an hour. So I had to be very careful in selecting which part of the history of Rolin-Jaequemyns to present to you. And Count Chakrarot has also stressed that I should talk also about the Thai monarchy. That is, I assume, to say that from the Thai citizens' perspective. So, without wasting any more time, let me begin my lecture. I begin by presenting to you the kings of the Rolin-Jaequemyns period. And I should explain immediately that this is the present period of our history. You will know already that we have had a much longer history, centuries longer history, through the Sukhothai period and the Ayutthaya period. But I'm afraid I don't have time to go through all of the kings of Thai history, okay? So we will confine ourselves to the present Rolin-Jaequemyns period, which means to say that beginning from the days when Bangkok was founded as the capital city of Siam. On the screen, ladies and gentlemen, I present the 3 kings that are grouped together as the early Bangkok period monarchs, Ramas the first, second, and third. These 3 kings enjoy the traditional monarchy that we had established and developed during the Ayutthaya history. This was indeed an absolute monarchy in which the king held power and exercised that power to run his country. Next, we have the middle Bangkok period, which was ruled over by Kings Rama IV and Rama V. And this is the period that I will concentrate my speech for tonight. Before that, let's just go on to the modern Bangkok period. Modern here in the sense that the kings had realized that the traditional monarchy is not something that would be enjoyed and welcomed by the international community. They had realized that the Thai monarchy must change and adapt in line with the international world, okay? So here we have the King Rama VI, who we loved very dearly because his education was in Great Britain. And there, without saying too much ado, you will understand, of course, that this was our first king who became an absolute Anglophile, that people like myself have taken examples of. Then following that of the modern Bangkok period, we have the King Rama VII, who reigned over a rather tragic reign. But that is, again, another story that we won't be able to touch upon. This was the period of change, or the attempt to change from absolute monarchy into democracy, which we seem to have failed dismally even to today. Then there was Rama VIII, the tragic king who was never crowned. He became king and was found, tragically, dead in his bed before the actual coronation. And lastly, we have, sadly, King Rama IX, who recently passed away, and we still mourn him. I came here this evening in this black tunic for the reason that I'm mourning my king, not to get lost in this dark stage, okay? But I am tonight mourning my beloved king. So allow me to go back and give you the history of all the monarchs of Ratanakosin. I'm sorry. Somehow I skipped one photograph. This is a photograph of King Rama I. You see him on the screen in a splendid portrait painting, colored painting at that. Well, please accept this information first, that traditionally the Thai kings were never portrayed in a piece of art in such a Western-style portrait. The traditional style portrait for Thai kings are known as the Buddha image in the regalia. In other words, they were sculpting Buddha image-like figures and putting the crown and the regalia on that Buddha image. That was the traditional imagery of kings of the early Bangkok period. But the portrait of Rama I you see on the screen was painted during the reign of King Rama VI, meaning to say we had already westernized and we had accepted the likeness portrait of a king must be as he looked like, not in the idealized form of a Buddha statue. This portrait was painted on the verbal evidence of people who had remembered. Can you believe it? People could remember what the king looked like and told the painters how to paint. So now we have this famous portrait of the King Rama I. Rama I was lauded as a very great king because during the Ayutthaya period, he was a warrior, a chief warrior of the Ayutthaya army. He was leading expeditions to quell problem-making neighbors. And so when Ayutthaya fell, the people thought about his fame as a warrior and invited him to become king of the new dynasty. So that was the reason why the king decided to build a new capital, Bangkok, rather than trying to resurrect Ayutthaya city itself that was at that time in a sad state of ruin. Ayutthaya had been ransacked by an invasion and left completely in ruins. As you can see it today, piles of bricks everywhere and nothing much to look at. Okay. The important achievement of King Rama I was that having resurrected the city and the society, therefore the nation, we were once more invaded by the Burmese, who intended very much to wipe the Siamese completely off the face of the earth. I say that strongly because I feel strongly about what had happened during that period. And it was the great ability and wisdom of King Rama I that he quelled all incursions from the Siamese troops, which resulted that when King Rama II came to the throne in 1809, the Siamese people were enjoying relative peaceful period. No more wartime, no more battles to fight. And therefore the arts flourished. Most of the famous tourist sites of Bangkok today were the result of King Rama II's work. He was also a great literary artist. He was composing poems and literary arts and music also. Now he is recognized by UNESCO as a world personage. Okay. That was a very creative period of Thai history. Now I come to King Rama III and the third portrait that had been painted from memory of the people who had met the king. King Rama III has an interesting observation by the European visitors of his period. I have read a European account of King Rama III calling him the usurper king. Now that's a little bit hard to call any king, okay? The reason for that was that the man who should have become Rama III was, meaning that the man who was born a son of the Queen to Rama II was sidestepped by the court of Siam, who invited his elder brother, who was not born of a queen. You know, of course, that the ancient kings of Siam had many queens and even many more wives apart from the queens, and were producing happily many babies of both boys and girls. Well, in this case, King Rama III was chosen rather than the rightful king because while he was growing up, he was trading with China, and his great trading skills had amassed for him great wealth. The legendary story says that, or let me say it this way, how do you keep piles of money when there was not yet any banking business in the country? How do you keep your wealth? Of course, you put your money in coffers, lock them up, and try to hide the coffers from prying eyes and hands. All right? Not this man. This man, the King Rama III, actually put his wealth into hundreds of red color cloth bags and piled the bags in the room next to his bedroom. That was how to keep your wealth if there are no banks to accept your deposits. Okay? And these red bag money became very famous because that was the money that saved the nation from being colonized by the French. Let me come back to that in my history book. I must first continue to describe my kings. It was also Rama III who voiced in the royal court for the first time, or rather publicly he said, "Forget our ancient traditional enemies." He was referring to the Burmese and the Cambodian and many of our neighbors that we were having border problems. Forget them, the king said. Beware of our new enemies, who he explained to be the British and the French. Rama III was the first king to pronounce publicly, beware of the British and the French. That was, of course, because he already was learning about the incursion, the British and the French, into Indochina. He voiced the alarm. Then, when King Rama IV came to the throne, he had already been a Buddhist monk for 27 years. This was a traditional Thai way of keeping out of eyesight and out of earshot. The man did not want to bother his brother king, who had, as I have said before, usurped the throne from him. Accept that as you will, please. While Rama III was reigning as king, that was 27 years period, King Mongkut became a Buddhist monk and studied and studied and studied. The man, believe it or not, learned Latin, how to read and write Latin. That was amazing when I first learned of this part of his biography. He had realized that in order to understand the European languages, you must begin with Latin. And that spilled over even to my generation, because before I went to Britain for my studies, I had to scrutinize Latin, and that was not an enjoyable lesson to take. All right? He also learned English, and he learned very well. He was very proficient in English, as you may already know from the name of Anna Leonowens, the British governess that King Mongkut had employed in court to teach his children English. And besides languages, he also took studies in astronomy and became pretty good at it. Pretty good enough that it killed him. astronomy actually killed this king because he had correctly predicted an eclipse of the sun and went out into the jungle, built a camp to observe that eclipse of the sun. And while doing so, he contracted malaria and succumbed to malaria fever, died. So did the next king, in fact. And lastly, I attribute this very greatly to his fame. That was, he started introducing European style. First, he started making diplomatic exchanges with France and Great Britain. For what purpose? For the purpose of not becoming enemy with the new enemies. Okay? And lastly, on the screen, if you please, he started to build palace buildings in the European style of architecture. This was a real intention to westernize in order to be seen as a modern nation by the Europeans. Now we come to the man that this dinner is all about, King Rama V, King Chulalongkorn. This was the king that very seriously modernized Siam in line with the European model. It was during this reign that we began to become Anglophiles. The king was demonstrating to the Thai people that the English were great gentlemen and ladies. And he urged Thai citizens to become English gentlemen and ladies. Okay, that was his purpose in modernizing this country. The king came to the throne at the age of only 15, which meant that he was a juvenile king and was not permitted to rule the country. So he spent the first 5 years of his life traveling through the British colonies in Southeast Asia to witness for himself what it was like to become a British or a French colony. And he saw great examples. For example, out of these examples, he introduced the railway system into Siam, also the telegraphy system into Siam. Okay. In my course of studies, I have seen a very strange map of Siam, ladies and gentlemen. In this map of Siam, someone had drawn a red color line. The map was in black and white. But someone had drawn a red color line all the way down the central river, the river that we are eating on the side of tonight. Someone had drawn a red line down this river all the way down from the river source out to the sea. Now, we learned that someone did ask the British, what is the meaning of this red line? And the British answered that this was our plan to build a telegraph line for the Thai people to use. Okay? Well, very unfortunately, I have to say this to you, ladies and gentlemen. that that man was lying, because I believe that the red line was the documentation of a plan to divide Siam into two halves. The western half would become a British colony ruled over out of British India, and the eastern half of our country were being planned to go to the French Indochina rule. So this was evidence indeed of demarcation, this country into two colonies, half to the British and half to the French. So this is the beginning of my story tonight. I will go on to describe how the King Rama V went about to avoid being colonized by either the British and the French. And now we bring in our hero for tonight, Gustave Rolin-Jaequemyns. Quickly, as we want to study, was born in 1835 and died in 1902. He was born in Belgium, became an attorney at law, and already the Minister of the Interior in Belgium. In 1891, he accepted a position in the court of King Rama V of Siam as a general advisor to the king. So he arrived here in 1892 and stayed until 1901. His achievements must be recognized because for a commoner, okay, forgive me for saying that, he was a commoner, to be elevated to the high title of Chao is indeed a very great honor, very great honor. It indicates to us, the Thai people, that he has served the king so well and so fruitfully that he deserved a very high honor. And the Thai title that was conferred to him was Chao Phya Abhai Racha Siam Manu Kunlakit. Chao Phya was the top honor that anyone could achieve, and this Belgian gentleman achieved it. We have seen this photograph also tonight, so I will not dwell on this, but I will go to the main part of my speech. I give you the chronology of events that happened in Siam during the late 19th century. When I do my research, studies, and so on, I rely on chronologies like this to understand what on earth was happening. Well, I begin on the first line, if you would follow me. In 1891, the Tsarevich Nicholas of Russia visited King Rama IV in Siam. This was Tsar Nicholas before he became Tsar and was entitled the Crown Prince, if you like, of Russia. Let me tell you a side story to this because it involves my family also. One day, the King Rama V called Prince Damrong my maternal grandfather to meet him and gave him an express order to leave Siam, go in search for the ship that was conveying the Tsarevich Nicholas on his tour of Southeast Asia. He also gave him a letter of invitation for Nicholas to stop by and visit Siam. Think about that. I heard the story and immediately sympathized with my grandfather. When you get an order that by the king of Siam, how do you go about carrying out the order? Go find the prince. Nobody knew where the prince was. What a difficult assignment to make. Well, to cut this long story short, Prince Damrong did find Nicholas, and by historical accounts, managed to have an audience with Nicholas the Tsarevich in Singapore, and managed to hand over that letter of invitation. The resulting effect was that Tsarevich Nicholas did come to Bangkok and spent 2 weeks in Bangkok. During those 2 weeks, Rama V did his best to tell Nicholas how he had modernized Bangkok in the European ways. The palace buildings had been built after the European style, designed by British architects based in Singapore. Okay. He had lost a dear wife who drowned in the river, and he built a memorial building for her, which still stands today in the European style also. So he showed Nicholas all these wonderful modernity in Siam. Then, as a last gesture, he invited Nicholas to go with him to Bang Pai Inn, where he was lavishly entertained with Thai culture, Thai food, Thai dance, Thai crafts. He simply showed the best that could be shown to the Tsar Nicholas, with the result that the two men became very, very close friends. That would have great effect to the stability of Siam. We go on that in 1892, Rolin-Jaequemyns granted an audience with the king, Rama V, to give advisory service on the reform of the Thai government system. Now, this was a very great achievement of Rolin-Jaequemyns. Thai government, traditional government, was for the king to choose his own ministers. And everything was ruled from the central system. It was centrified rule. Okay. Gustave Rolin-Jaequemyns advised the king to reorganize the Thai government, introducing ministerial posts, and that was the reform of the Thai government system into what we have today. An incident a surprising incident happened in 1894, known now as the Pak Nam incident. That was when a French gunboat, believe it or not, put aside any pretense of friendship with Siam, sent a gunboat up the river, this our own river tonight also, the Manam River. A gunboat actually came up the river and there was an ensuing gunfight between the French gunboat and the fort, which is not far from we are today either, in the naval grounds of today. And funnily enough, the fort, that very fort, that fought with the French gunboat, had been built by the French themselves during the Ayutthaya period. Anyway, there was a fight, and the Thai people lost that fight, gave up the surrender to the French, and the French demanded great war compensation, a huge sum of money for war compensation. And where did we get that huge sum of money from? Yes, you have guessed, from the room next door to Rama III's bedroom. So his amassed wealth actually paid for that war compensation during the reign of King Rama V. Next in my chronology, I learned that Tsarevich Nicholas actually became the Tsar Nicholas of Russia in 1894. And then the next date I have was that during 1896, you remember he arrived in 1892. It took him only 4 years' work to achieve the status of the appointed general advisor in the government of Siam. That was how great the man was. Appointed in 1896. Then in 1897, the next year, King Rama V went on his first European visit. That is no coincidence. I believe sincerely that one of the wise advices that Rolin-Jaequemyns gave to King Rama V was to travel to Europe and visit the European courts. What a better diplomatic relation than for the king to travel himself. Okay. While in Europe, King Rama V visited many European courts, very many indeed, and it appeared as if his diplomatic mission was to all the European countries. Contrary to my belief, ladies and gentlemen, if you will accept this from me, that he actually went to Europe with the aim of visiting only one person, and that was his great friend, Tsar Nicholas of Russia. That was his ultimate destination in Europe. Okay. And soon after this visit, all French and British territorial aggression on Siam ceased. How? What happened? I show you one last photograph. This is it. This is a photograph of King Chulalongkorn Rama V of Siam and Tsar Nicholas of Russia, taken together in Russia on the suggestion of Nicholas. Okay. This photograph was widely published in Europe. And once the British and the French saw that Russia had befriended Siam, they ceased all aggressive intentions, and Siam was saved from being overrun and colonized by both the British and the French. So, I will come to the conclusion of my talk tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin by asking you to imagine what would have happened had Siam been divided by half, right down that red line, so that half became a British colony and the other half became a French colony. We all fully know that eventually all the British and the French colonies were given independence. Years later, they were given independence. And they have been celebrating that independence ever since. Not so Siam. I put to you that had we been divided in half and half into two colonies of two European powers, the chances of gaining independence at the same time from the two powers was nil. There was no chance at all to gain independence at the same time. So, this country would have become independent countries split into two halves forever. Siam would never have been able to come back together as one independent country as you know it, and hopefully you're enjoying visiting it today. This decision to go to Europe, I believe, was one of the greatest advices of Rolin-Jaequemyns given to King Rama V, apart from many others. So I end this speech by lauding Gustave Rolin-Jaequemyns for actually finding a way to save Siam from being colonized by the two great powers of Europe. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, MR Chakrarot Chitrabongs. That was a priceless account. And thank you so much for the great work that you have put in to prepare this great presentation. Could I ask you to please move to the center? And now, may I request His Excellency Philip Kredelka, His Excellency the Ambassador of the Belgians to Thailand, to please step forward and to hand over a token of appreciation to His Excellency MR Chakrarot Chitrabongs. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for an eminent Thai historian in the present time, MR Chakrarot Chitrabongs.